our plenary session. This is Our Future Reflects Our Past, the evolution of forensic science, challenges and advances over the decades. My name is Betty Lane Desports. I am the President-elect of the Academy. I'm here to welcome you on behalf of President John Gurns. Unfortunately, John had a medical emergency the weekend he was supposed to fly out to the meeting, so he is unable to be here. But he wanted me to tell you that he is very proud of the program he put together, and he hopes that you enjoy it. This session in particular was a source of pride for John. He's tried very hard to get across his theme this year, and mentorship is one of his causes. So we're here today for the plenary session, which will provide a forum to examine the evolution, challenges, and progress of forensic science and the Academy from the perspective of former and current leaders in the forensic science community. Each past president will discuss their challenges, opportunities, and innovations that were encountered during their careers, and more specifically, during their terms as president. Our first presenter is Kenneth Field. Mr. Field was the Academy historian from 1992 until he retired in 2010. Mr. Field became a member of the General Section in 1971 and served as the Academy and the Forensic Science Foundation Executive Director from 1979 until 1984. He is a Distinguished Fellow and became a Gradwall Laureate in 1997. Mr. Field currently resides in Colorado Springs, Colorado, where he will celebrate his 99th birthday next month. The following is a short video in his own words reflecting on the history of the Academy.
To the end of coordination of all agencies and efforts, I wish to recommend to this group the formation of a central organization of a permanent nature to meet annually. Its aims and purposes will be to become a clearinghouse for new ideas and developments, to support reforms in legislatures and courts, to study and recommend new methods of jurisprudence.
Rutherford B. Hayes Gradwall had a view that was not common. In fact, it was most uncommon. He felt that instead of having only single discipline meetings, they should have an organization that would hold meetings for all of the disciplines. He happened at that time to be the head of the St. Louis Police Department Research Department. He had a good friend in Cuba by the name of Dr. Castellano. And between the two of them, they decided in 1947 that they would put on a meeting. And so Gradwall was going to do the meeting portion of it in St. Louis, and the Cuban doctor was going to find 7 speakers from the Central American and North South American countries to come and speak. When Dr. Gradwall got back to the United States, he called upon a good friend, Dr. Sidney Kay, who had worked with him in the research department but was now working in the state of Virginia with the medical examiner. And he was in charge of the planning, along with Dr. Gradwall. They put together a program that looked pretty good, including the 7 speakers from Central America. And they decided that they would hold it at the St. Louis Police Department Academy. It was going to be called, well, it was called, the first American Medical Legal Congress. It turned out in later times that medical legal was not going to be an acceptable way to describe the meeting, but nonetheless, that's what it was called for the first one. The meeting was going to take place in January. The fee to attend the meeting was $5. On the day of the meeting, they found out that Dr. Castellano and the 7 men could not attend, and a total of 50 scientists came to the meeting. Now, to appreciate the fact that they got 50 scientists to come to the meeting, you have to keep in mind that nobody knew who in the United States was doing forensic work. The meeting had only been in effect for about, I think 3 to 4 hours, and Dr. Gradwall realized that the enthusiasm of the attendees probably meant that he could suggest to them that they design an organization. So he called upon one of the doctors to head a small committee to leave the meeting to work out what they thought was a proper constitution. That man was Dr. Lemoyne Snyder. He worked on the name of the organization, and he came up with the American Academy of Forensic Science. Well, they decided that they would hold it in Chicago. They had Dr. Gradwall as the chairman of the meeting, and Ralph Turner was the secretary-treasurer. Those were the two officers. And they were both re-elected, only now they would be called the president of the Academy and the secretary-treasurer. It became the American Academy at that meeting in 1950. They realized at that meeting that they had to have some committees that would be permanent and then a bunch of committees that would be temporary. Here are some of the permanent committees: the structure of the Academy, the bylaws, ethics, meeting place, meeting program, who would be in charge of any exhibits if they had any, treasurer, and they are still part of the permanent committees of the Academy. They decided they would hold the meeting again in Chicago, and the Drake Hotel became the hotel for the meeting 8 out of the next 10 years.
As a founding member, Kurt Dubowski played an important role with his expertise in parliamentary procedure. He also insisted that each section be represented on the board of directors. That structure has endured and makes up the composition of the board today.
At the beginning, that executive committee interviewed every single applicant to be a member. The sections that they had created had no leader and no function. It was just a nice device for the secretary-treasurer to pocket them in one of the 7 organizations. And I might point out that it was pathology, psychiatry, immunology, jurisprudence, police science, question documents, and toxicology. There were bids that were made to create a new section, a new discipline. And the Central Control Committee, Executive Committee, said no. They were for exclusivity. And what everybody wanted was a little more, they called it democracy. They wanted to have a hand in things of that nature, not just membership, but in all other aspects of the meeting. This went on for quite some time, and I should point out that they had accepted as members people who were not fit into the disciplines that existed. They were just labeled as being general. In 1967, the general section got its first start. 2 men who were generalists said, "Let's get together." And they did. And in 1968, they created the general section. Unfortunately, the officers that they had elected to be the head of the new discipline were not fellows, and the rule was you had to be a fellow, and so they were not accepted. The following year, the general section got those two men into being fellows, and they were off and running. Years later, Ollie Schroeder, in reviewing how that general section was created, said that it was conceived in controversy and born in illegitimacy. And that pretty well summed it up. In 1967, there also was a meeting of the executive committee, and a motion was made to create a foundation. Everybody agreed. The Forensic Science Foundation had officers, were now a 501c3, had a grant that they were going to start working on, and everything was in place. In 1972, the Academy approved the affiliation with the foundation. From there until 1980, the Academy got a free ride on the foundation. After 1980, when all of the grants dried up, there was no more money, it reversed. The Academy now accommodated the foundation, and that's the way it is today. I should make reference to the fact that Dr. Gradwall died in 1959, and the only credits that he had from the Academy was a scroll, and it wasn't even framed. A committee was formed, and they created the Gradwall Medallion, which they said was to be 14-karat gold, given off not regularly, and that it was to comply with the group of varying things that you should have done. The first of those Gradwall Awards was given to Dr. Halprin posthumously. He died before he got back to his own home from the meeting. When the Academy asked the foundation to become involved in getting certification going, the foundation got a grant to test out the procedures that would have to be followed to get certification. Each of the disciplines that were interested in it and could do it were asked to form a small committee that would be the focal point for getting the work done. The first of the people who were ready to accredit, I believe, was toxicology or question document examination. In the late 60s, odontology was admitted to the Academy as a discipline. A year later, physical anthropology came in. So now we have 3 new members of the Academy: the general section, odontology, and physical anthropology.
The Journal of Forensic Sciences is the oldest of the present-day widely circulated English-language, internationally oriented forensic science and medical journals.
The Academy knew that it had to have a publication that would take the proceedings of the meetings and would be a place where the Academy members could submit papers that they had written, that now if they wanted them published, they had to go to parent organizations of another nature. They knew that they had to do this, and therefore in 1956 they decided that they would have a journal. There was a question that was made in the late 1970s: why don't we have any women members? And so they started to do some thinking about it. First of all, they found out that there were darn few women employed in the forensic science. But nonetheless, there they were. The first person that was accepted, I believe in 1973 or 74, Mary Cowan. She turned out to be a criminalist. And several years later, she was the chairman of the criminalistics section. The second one was June Jones, a toxicologist. Lo and behold, in late 1970s, she became the president of the Academy.
In simple terms, the American Academy of Forensic Sciences was conceived as an inclusive, not exclusive, expanding, not limiting, open, not closed, dynamic, not static, professional society.
I do believe that young people coming into the forensic science profession should look very carefully at the amount of education it takes to be a good whatever they want to be, toxicologist, odontologist, because in many cases it now is not a bachelor's degree that is satisfactory, it's a master's degree. Once you have looked very carefully at it, start figuring out how you're going to acquire that added degree, if it's required. I do believe that if you're going to be a member of the Academy, one of the major requirements is to participate. Be on a committee at the section level or at the Academy level. Strive valiantly to attend Academy meetings and keep your continuing education going, because the profession is changing. I believe that certification was one of the more pleasing things that I saw come to fruition. It was a hard job, but how it turned out was extremely satisfactory. You know, you always wonder, what is the future for the Academy? Where are they going? And I'll go back to Shakespeare. In The Tempest, one of the statements that he made, what is past is prologue. And that's the future that I see for the Academy. They learn from what they've done and what's available to be done. The one thing that I carried away from the Academy was a slogan that I wrote, and it never went anyplace. Is it the truth? That's the whole history of forensic science.